Morning, Gamecock fans. Today is Monday, July 21st, the year of our Lord 2025, and you are listening to Coffee with JC Shurburtt. Thanks for joining me today on another Monday. Gosh, this is a dead time. It's not a dead time of the year because there's plenty to talk about, but I think the anticipation gets dragged out a bit. I think we're 11 days from the Gamecock starting practice, or 10. Whittle had an article over the weekend. I don't remember if it was on Saturday or Sunday, but it was 12 days until the start of fall camp for the South Carolina Gamecocks, getting ready for a much anticipated 2025 season. But yeah, you have media days. I think the Big Ten and ACC are going this week. So in college football at large, you'll have a lot to talk about. But boy, Gamecocks go on a Monday at SEC media days, and there's all this great stuff. And now it's just like, you sort of have that extra lull, get that extra vacation in, do those honeydew list things because the season is about to start. I think 6 Saturdays or Sundays away from kickoff for the Gamecocks, and 6 Saturdays from the big opener in college football. 5 Saturdays away from week 0, which outside of a pretty intriguing Big 12 matchup in Dublin between Iowa State and Kansas State, they call it Farmageddon. I think that's a pretty cool name for, I guess, is that a rivalry? I guess they used to be in the Big Eight together a long time ago. Both were pretty terrible, but they're good now. So Farmageddon for Iowa State and Kansas State in good old Ireland this year. That game could mean something because, Phil Steele was talking on JC and Morgan last week about how the Big 12 probably has 8 contenders, and those two teams are 2 of them. But I've said this before. I wish they'd just give us maybe 2 more games in week 0. It doesn't have to be anything big, but you've got the game in Dublin normally, and then just donkey other games, just donkey awful. It's Hawaii and some team they should beat, and just man, it's brutal. Why even have a week 0? Anyway, but looking forward to all of that. Looking forward to getting through the lull of the show later today with Phil and I. We'll talk about a lot of different topics, probably similar to what we always talk about. And then the morning show this morning, it's the normal Monday lineup, back to normal here on Chief Sports, because last week, of course, Shane Beamer was talking during it. It was just Mike and JB, but we got Mike and JB today, and then John Whittle on all things from thebigspur.com with his weekly segment, settling back into his normal spot, which always is a welcome development. But all right, so to get down to it, big news for the Gamecocks on Friday night, as anticipated, as expected. Wasn't a surprise or anything. Landon Duckworth commits to South Carolina. Landon Duckworth is a tremendous pickup for the Gamecocks. I know they picked him up again because he was previously committed all the way back on August 5th, 2023. Gosh, lots happened in those 2 years. I still had Carolina Rise. We were getting ready for a tailgate in Charlotte to support NIL at Carolina. Mark Bryan from Hootie and the Blowfish played, and what a great day that was. And then the game happened, and then the season happened. But committed then, stuck with it until June 25th of 2024 when he decommitted. I thought he was gone. You have the 2024 season, the change from Dowell Loggins to Mike Shula. Mike Shula locks in on him. Darren Usher did a great job as well, and they got him back. And he, as time moved on, because rankings wise, early, yeah, he was highly rated, but you've heard my spiel about they do rankings too early. But as time went on and kind of everything sifted out, it's clear he's one of the top quarterbacks in the country. Probably maybe the best running quarterback. It doesn't mean he can't throw, but what he can do with his legs is quite special. I know that there is a school of thought out there as far as South Carolina is concerned that things are better when they have a dual threat quarterback that can actually make some plays with his feet. I don't disagree with that. I mean, history shows us that there haven't been The time South Carolina's offense has really struggled, really, gosh, right? Steven Garcia, when he took over full time for Steve Spurrier in '09, and he started some in '08 too, and I think the writing was on the wall then. Because Garcia could get some yards with his legs, of course. I mean, really pretty good at that. And then, of course, he gave way to Connor Shaw, who was a dual threat. Dylan Thompson could, I mean, you can ask Clemson folks. He can obviously get yards with his legs when he wanted to. He's a great athlete, a basketball player, and then kind of during the transition, it was Perry Orth for a while. Ultimately, um, and you saw like when Connor Mitch started at the beginning of 2015, Perry had a long run against A&M. Perry was the type. There are really two types of dual threat quarterbacks, and I'm not going to categorize them all. I don't really have to dig in, but there's the guys that can really hurt you with their legs, like bad, like over and over, and that would be your guys like Lenore Sellers, um, Connor Shaw, that would fit in that category. Um, Garcia, you make an argument for. And then there are guys that could move a little bit, but enough to be effective. Perry Orth would have been in that category. Jake Bentley would have been in that category. Ryan Holinsky, probably, you would even say. Not statues in the pocket, but when they've run into situations, when they've had that kind of deal, it's been tough under Spurrier. What ended up happening, Chris Smelly, obviously, we found out since Smelly had a bad shoulder during that time, and that hurt his velocity. But he was fine when you protected him. Blake Mitchell too. But if you have offensive line problems, which I've said before, it's never going to be a perfect day on the offensive line in the SEC. You cut down on bad plays, lost yardage plays when you have guys that can get out of trouble, reset the pocket, move. Um, and I think that when Carolina's offense has really struggled, and this has nothing to do with we all love Zeb Nolan and think that thank God for him because he won the Vandy game. He started in the win over North Carolina in 2021 and played pretty well, for the Gamecocks at times when he had protection, but he wasn't getting away. Colin Hill wasn't getting away in 2020. Was not a runner. Not. I'm not going to say go all the way for statue there, but those guys weren't the same guys as like a Spencer Rattler. Spencer, not necessarily a runner, but he could get out of trouble. And I think we've seen through the years that that's very beneficial. And it's even more beneficial when you have a Shaw or a Sellers type that can do both and run and throw. You had some guys like Brandon McElwain and Lorenzo Nunez who maybe weren't, maybe McElwain, it would be a little unfair because he was a true freshman and didn't have a lot around him. But they ran him quite a bit, and that was kind of his best thing. Lorenzo Nunez, straight up runner most of the time that he would have had to have evolved as a passer. Didn't mean to speak those two names may cause some anxiety around here, but it's very beneficial when you can have both. I mean, even I mentioned the Mayo Bowl win over North Carolina. Yeah, Zeb started it and he threw a touchdown to Gene Bell and all that, or I guess he didn't start, but he played. But to carry on Joyner in that football game, very beneficial. It's always kind of been that way. Um, and I think that Landon Duckworth fits the mold of a guy that's not only like I can escape pressure, but a guy that can do serious, serious damage, with his feet. He's 6'3", he's 195 pounds. Right now listed at he's an 0.9670 24/7 sports composite rating. That's a high-ish 4-star. Number 64 overall nationally, so a top 70 recruit, top 65 recruit nationally overall. The number 6 quarterback in the country, number 5 prospect in the state of Alabama, Jackson High School in Jackson, Alabama. As far as ratings go through the years, recruiting wise, Garcia, Helinski, and then Duckworth. So in the modern era of recruiting, he's the third highest ranked quarterback the Gamecocks have signed. And in pretty good company there with Steven Garcia. I know Helinski didn't work out, but there you go. I mentioned Chris Smelley earlier. Chris Smelley was from Tuscaloosa, Alabama. The Gamecocks did sign Tanner Bailey from Gordo during the Beamer era. He transferred out and quit football for a while. He's now on Auburn's roster, is my understanding. So he's the third from Alabama. I think he's the third Alabama commit in this class, joining Keenan Britt and KJ Johnson. Britt's from Oxford, Alabama, in the northern part of the state. Johnson's from Birmingham. And then Jackson is between Montgomery and Mobile, sort of in the southern part of the state. The Gamecocks beat Auburn head to head on him. Florida State and Ole Miss lingered. Frankly, I thought Florida State or Ole Miss would end up getting him, but didn't happen. And so that's a big recruiting win. South Carolina has historically, even with the big 5-star end last year, I think Jared Smith was his name. Carolina thought they were getting him, had him teed up, and ended up opting to stay in state. Historically, they haven't beaten Auburn too many times on players, particularly players from that state. But they beat him on Duckworth head to head, and so that's what happened. For now, he hadn't signed yet, but I do believe that I believe that's significant because if I think back during the Spurrier era, yes, South Carolina, Marcus Lattimore had Auburn up there for him. Gus Malzahn, obviously, very attractive place for him. Penn State was also firmly in the mix for that one. A lot of people don't talk about Penn State, but Penn State was right there with Joe Paterno. Joe Paterno trashed Steve Spurrier's offense too for running backs. Isn't that funny? Bless him. Bless the old school recruiting battles. But anyway, Auburn hadn't necessarily come into the state and beaten the Gamecocks like they did back in the day when Stephen Davis opted for Auburn. I don't know that Carolina was even second there. I think it was Alabama, and Clemson was in the mix for Stephen Davis out of Spartanburg High School as well. But, they last 20 years, they haven't really been great at doing that. They've gotten players out of South Carolina, but it's nobody Carolina's worried about losing. But going into Alabama and beating them on a quarterback, an Elite 11 quarterback at that, is pretty significant. My understanding about Duckworth, I don't want to speak for him too much. This is just through the grapevine. I did hear he's a big Alabama fan. So, and Alabama did not go on him. So who knows? Who knows how that all works out in that state? It's kind of like our state, Clemson, or you either Clemson or Carolina. Growing up, he was an Elite 11 finalist, which means he was among the top 11 quarterbacks according to their staff with the Elite 11. Like I said a few weeks back, the Elite 11 is about passing. You don't really, there's no, they do pass rushing awareness drills and things like that, but you're not out there in pads showing off your rushing ability. So that's a positive, I think, because they're kind of sticklers with that grading. That they like the good fundamental guy that can make all the throws and all that. And so that means he was among the best, the very best in this class. I think that's a testament to the work he's put in to continue to improve as a passer. And he's got a very quick release. I like that about his arm talent. Very quick release, good velocity. Different type of thrower than Lenore Sellers. Different than Aaron Nolan and Cutter Woods as well. Very live, what I call a live arm. Zip, zip, zip. if that makes any sense. But certainly, running the football, he's outstanding. And he's a winner. This is another thing I really like about Landon Duckworth. These days, a lot of times quarterbacks do play one sport and they're quarterbacking year round. And I think that's fine. If you're good, I think sometimes it leads to highly rated guys either taking a while to get used to this level of football and the competitive aspect of it and the speed of it and all that. Um, sometimes they bust highly rated guys that are I call them 7-on-7 heroes. There's players like out of Texas that play in these spread offenses. They never get hit, they never get touched because they're kind of playing keep away. They snap the ball, throw it out. I mean, it's impossible for an end to get to you if you're doing that all day. And I've seen those guys struggle through the years, especially when they come into the SEC, or they get into a system that isn't like that. Big time spread, get it out quick, go fast, that kind of thing. I've seen them go to the Big 12 and be just fine. But in the SEC, as we know, it's a different story. So I tend to like guys that compete and play other sports. Lenore Sellers played soccer growing up. It was a funny in his interview with Mark Ingram on Mark Ingram and Urban Meyer's podcast the other day. He said his dad said, "You can either do ballet and dance or you can do soccer." Smart dad, because we see the footwork now in the run game, especially the elusiveness and soccer and all that. That helps that. My dad would have probably gone crazy if I played soccer or wanted to do ballet or dance. So smart dads. Norris Sellers is a smart human being as far as that that's concerned. I kind of think he's pretty smart overall based on his comments about Lenoris and all that. So good job, Lenoris Sellers' dad. But so multi-sport experience I think helps you. Here's what I love about Duckworth. It's all he does is win, win, win. Football team won the 4A state championship in Alabama last year. They were ranked as one of the super small town teams from Jackson. Went 14-1 in basketball, where he averaged 10.3 points per game last season. They're two-time defending state champs. And that's what I always say, you got a quarterback that's got to lead you down the field with a minute 15 to go to win a game or to tie it or to keep you in it or to salt it away. Give me the guy that hit the front end of a 1-and-1 with 1 second to go to tie the game in a playoff game in high school basketball over the 7-on-7 hero. Because 7-on-7 is not real football. Remember when everybody, by the way, just as an aside, was talking about how that would be the next AAU basketball and guys were going to quit their high school teams and just do 7-on-7 and all that nonsense? Yeah, that hadn't happened, has it? So I was skeptical. I was like, football is just so different, because you're not out there actually playing. And but people kept talking, it's going to be huge, going to be big. I guess, those that were pushing that were seeking money. I guess now they're involved with the transfer portal. I don't know. Anyway, back to Landon Duckworth. So, two-time defending state champ, double-digit score in basketball. I think that's big. And then, during the spring, Landon goes and competes in track, 4x100, the 200, the high jump, the long jump. All good times there. I think around 23 seconds in the 200, maybe 22. I didn't write that one down. But a standout on the track as well. So he's an outstanding athlete. And then people that play multiple sports and go and win in those multiple sports are part of winning teams. The core tenet of the Gamecock program is competition. Beamer says it over and over. Well, this is a guy that loves to compete. So I think that's huge when you're talking about a future starting quarterback for the Gamecocks. And when will he start? To be determined. I saw somebody had a really good scouting report breakdown here on YouTube. I don't remember the name, but it was really good. And they kind of, when you're trying to talk about, I've been there, talk about a lot of different teams. Sometimes when you're in kind of the breaking news moment, you don't, you just kind of glance at the depth chart, and he did say Air Nolan was slotted to be the heir apparent to Lenore Sellers, and maybe that's true. Maybe that happens, but it's not settled business at all right now. And so, he kind of said Landon Duckworth would probably redshirt, and I agree. I think that 2026 is next season, but it's a long way off as far as I'm concerned. Who knows what's going to happen between now and then? Um, but as a true freshman, most quarterbacks redshirt. I try to get them some time, get them acclimated with the system, watch. You hope you don't need those guys. You hope you don't have to pull a red shirt off a true freshman and that he's your best guy, because that hurts sometimes. Uh, one thing the national media is starting to get wrong is last year Lenore Sellers was a redshirt freshman, not a true freshman. So it's kind of funny because they talk about him being a true freshman, then they turn around and say he could be the top pick in the draft, and I'm like, well, if he was played as a true freshman last year and did all that, then he would still have one more year after this year. Dylan Stewart is not draft eligible. Lenore Sellers is. Anyway, so will Duckworth start right away? I can't tell you. I don't know. I think he's awfully good, but that's a long way away between now and next season. And you do have Cutter Woods there. You do have Aaron Nolan. Who knows if they may go get a transfer portal quarterback? Uh, and that's assuming Lenore Sellers does go on to the NFL, which I think we should all hope that he's good enough to be that number one pick. The team ranking for South Carolina has skyrocketed as expected with the commitment of Duckworth. Gamecocks are now 24th overall nationally and eighth in the SEC. People ask me all the time about team recruiting rankings. I don't, I'm looking at it. Is South Carolina adding quality players? I mean, the 2024 class was really, really good, and it was in the low 20s. You're at the mercy of the algorithm. You're at the mercy of recruiting analysts liking or not liking, or undervaluing or overvaluing, and they're rating 1,000, 2,500 different kids. It's a crapshoot, and then there's not that much difference between number 9 and number 19. It's digits. It's a rounding error, so to speak. So I don't put too much into it. But if people ask me and want to nail me down, like what's a good goal, if you care about it, um, what could be again? Recruiting rankings are what? They're odds. They're like the Vegas odds. They're a predictor of success, but they're not set in stone. I think top half of the conference is always a good thing to shoot for, especially in a 16 team conference. And, you brought in two blue bloods that are, whether they sign a good class or not, they're probably going to be ranked high. I've seen some classes at Texas that were ranked in the top 5 that weren't worth a nickel. I've seen Oklahoma be ranked in the top 10 and weren't worth a nickel. But I think that that's a good thing to shoot for, considering the size of the conference. The Gamecocks are now eighth in the SEC. But here's what's interesting. Um, you look at the average rating per player on 24/7 Sports. You toggle that, and the Gamecocks are number 11 nationally, and LSU I think is second, and has 16 commits. So that's kind of in the range of the Gamecocks with 13, but nobody has like that low number of commits that's ranked high um, as the Gamecocks do. A lot of Texas A&M has double the number of commits, 26, as South Carolina. So it's still a small class. So to be 24th and 8th and 11th nationally in average rating, I think that's pretty solid for the Gamecocks for right now. There's still meat on the bone too. Like look at it like a rib or a chicken wing if you're one of those. Like some folks I know that just take it all off. I can't eat chicken wings that way. there's the gristle and stuff. I can't do it. Uh, if you like chicken wings, go to D's Wings, West Columbia. Shameless plug for one of our sponsors on the show. Anyway, so who's left? There's several. Flip candidates aside, because they are going to try to flip some guys. That's a given. There was another welcome home on Friday. I think it's, maybe Amari Thomas, the kid that was committed to Florida State from Bluntstown, Florida, that he decommitted while we were on the show. A speed back, a player Carolina, Markwell Blackwell, the running backs coach, likes an awful lot. Blountstown, again, I was probably a little bit skeptical because Blountstown's so close to Tallahassee. I mean, there's a lot of Noel love there. And he was an early commit, but he decommits. And so it could be him. I think August 9th is when he has maybe scheduled an announcement. Hale had an article about somehow August 9th. So maybe announces in August. Could be Caden Ramsey. Don't sleep on him. That's another in-state guy from Cross, South Carolina, tight end, 6'5", 208, big athletic dude from Cross High School down near Charleston. So it could be him. It is not Darius Gray, the five-star offensive lineman from Richmond, but that's another guy the Gamecocks are still, icing on the cake kind of with him. And then they'll try to flip, and then they'll look for senior risers, and then they'll hit the portal. And that will be the story of the class of 2026 at South Carolina. Also, want to remind everybody about this class, too. I've said it before. The Gamecocks are up 2-0 heading into it because Donovan Murph and Jordan Gitteron were supposed to be in this class, but they're not. Now, okay, so Sequel Patterson is now, and he was 2027, so you make up for it. But they're still up 1-0 heading in. And Murph and Gitteron, I saw some pictures of Gitteron the other day on his Instagram, and yeah, he was a little skinny and young looking coming in. He looks like a grown ass man now. So maybe he's not that far away. I don't know. I think because he's so young, I mean, he's my stepson's age, and should be, going to junior prom right now. Or should have gone to June, not right now, a couple of months ago. Gosh, my calendar's off. It isn't prom season, JC. So anyway, I, I think Carolina is ahead of the game. I think as far as this class goes, the losses notwithstanding, those are very disappointing. And I've gotten into the in-state losses were the ones that were hard to swallow because you don't want that to happen over and over again. And in a position, the two guys they lost, Walker, obviously edge is a need this year. You want to keep signing talented edge players. Dylan Stewart ain't gonna be there forever. And you do have Addison and Quay Dodd in the freshman class that are going to be good, but you want to continue to stack it because they rotate. And Carter Meadows and Julian Walker both opted for Michigan. Now Meadows is from DC. But Walker right there in the backyard. And, like I said, though, Friday, knowing the story, he's a coach's kid. It's not like he grew up in South Carolina and it's just like, oh, I'm out of here. His family's moved around a lot because his dad's a coach and roots in Chicago and the Midwest. When you dig in, you understand. When you dig into that, you understand. And then with Watkins, a freak, going to Texas A&M, that's kind of the one that's just bizarre, but we all know what that one was about. And hey, we'll just see what happens down the road. But I do think that the losses were it was a period where, let's just face it, it didn't seem like much was going Carolina's way. But then Kamari Blair happens. Tristan Lewis from Greenwood, in-state sleeper. Now, we're talking about Carolina possibly flipping a guy from Florida State's backyard. You sign a quarterback from Auburn's backyard over Auburn. You got a commitment from a kid from Tennessee, not really in their backyard. It's Clarksville, but that's hard to do when Tennessee wants them, and it comes down to the U and the Vols. Well, they beat Gardner Webb on Tristan Lewis. So there you go. There's your big recruiting battle win. But there are a lot people are excited about him. He can't. He's 6'3", 205, long-armed. Looked really good at DB. Plays quarterback for Greenwood High School. Greenwood has a high hit rate. So we'll see kind of kind of what happens with him moving forward. So, we'll find, hopefully we find out the welcome home. If the welcome home does not go public during this week and it kind of lingers for a little while, you may could make a safe prediction. My dog's barking, so I got to go. A safe prediction for Amari Thomas, in my opinion. And then, if it is announced this week, it probably won't not be him. Could be, but not. Maybe it's more Caden Ramsey or somebody like that. But that's my opinion on that. All right, we got a big week this week. The show, Inside the Gamecocks, the morning show, Chief Sports, late night Gamecock show coming around. Check out SEC Sunday night. They had Max Chadwick from Pro Football Focus. There was some Gamecock talk last night right here on the Chief Sports South Carolina YouTube page. And yeah, if you're listening on YouTube, watching on YouTube, please like, subscribe, and share. If you're on the podcast, please go rate us 5 stars. Don't write a nasty review. But if you do, I can't track you down and ask you why because it's all anonymous. So you're a coward. Anyway, yeah, I appreciate you folks listening today. Sorry about the dog there at the end. But it's always a pleasure to bring you coffee each and every morning with a focus on South Carolina football. I am JC Shurburtt. This has been Coffee. I am out. Holla at you soon.